The holographic display flickered in the dim light of the ranger station. Hyun-woo leaned forward in his chair, watching the faces of the Galactic Conservation Council members appear one by one in the projection. His jaw tightened as Chancellor Vorath, a tall reptilian being with green scales and cold yellow eyes, called the emergency session to order. "We gather today for a somber duty," Vorath announced, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "After 5 years of extensive search operations and 3 failed expeditions, we must face the truth. The Velkara are gone." Hyun-woo's fist clenched on the armrest. He had been a ranger on Kethera, 7 for 8 years. Longer than any other human. He knew this planet's forests, valleys, and mountains better than anyone. And he knew the council was wrong. Ambassador Dai-soon, the human representative, stood up in the council chamber. She was a dignified woman in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Chancellor, with respect, 5 years is not sufficient time to declare a species extinct on a planet as vast as Kethera 7. The Velkara are intelligent creatures. Perhaps they are simply avoiding us." Several council members shifted uncomfortably. The Velkara had once been legendary across the galaxy. They were massive wolf-like creatures, standing nearly 3 meters tall at the shoulder. Their fur shimmered with an almost metallic quality, shifting from silver to deep blue depending on the light. Ancient records spoke of their intelligence, their complex social structures, and strange abilities that bordered on the telepathic. But no one had seen one in years. "Ambassador Dai-soon," Vorath replied with barely concealed impatience. "We appreciate human sentiment. However, sentiment does not change facts. Our survey teams have covered 78% of the planet. No tracks. No sightings. No thermal signatures. The Velkara are extinct." Hyun-woo couldn't stay quiet any longer. He activated his transmitter, his image appearing in a small window at the edge of the council's display. "Chancellor, this is Ranger Hyun-woo from Station 12. I need to report something." Vorath's eyes narrowed. "Ranger, this is a closed council session. I've been tracking signs in the Deep Thorn Valley," Hyun-woo continued, ignoring the protocol breach. "Fresh disturbances in the vegetation, territorial markings on the rock faces. Something large has been moving through that region." A murmur rippled through the council. One member, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Quilara, pulsed with interest. "The Deep Thorn Valley? That region was marked as too dangerous for survey teams." "Exactly," Hyun-woo said, leaning toward his camera. "I can bring you proof." Chancellor Vorath's expression hardened. "The Deep Thorn Valley is off-limits for a reason, Ranger. The gravitational anomalies alone make it a death trap. The word example, fort about. We will not risk more lives chasing ghosts." He made a gesture, and Hyun-woo's transmission window began to close. This council does not make decisions based on speculation from isolated rangers. "Wait." Hyun-woo's protest was cut off as his connection terminated. He sat back in his chair, breathing hard. Through the window of his station, he could see the endless forest of Kethera 7, stretching toward distant mountains. Somewhere out there, in the unexplored regions, he knew the Velkara still lived. He could feel it in his bones. The holographic display continued showing the council session. Ambassador Dai-soon was still fighting. "Chancellor, I formally request a postponement of this decision. The human conservation community believes. The human conservation community is well known for its emotional attachment to endangered species," Vorath interrupted. "While admirable, such attachment clouds judgment. The facts are clear. This council has a responsibility to be realistic, not hopeful." He looked around at the other members. "All those in favor of declaring the Velkara extinct?" One by one, hands, tentacles, and various appendages raised in agreement. 14 votes in favor. Only 5 against, including Dai-soon. "The motion passes," Vorath declared. "As of this date, the Velkara are officially classified as extinct." The protected status of Kethara 7 is hereby revoked. Mining surveys may begin within 30 days. Hyun-woo felt something break inside his chest. It wasn't just about the Velkara anymore. Once mining operations began, the entire planet would be torn apart. The forests, the valleys, the pristine ecosystems all would be destroyed in the search for rare minerals buried beneath Kethara 7's surface. The holographic display shut off automatically. Hyun-woo sat in the darkness of his station, the only light coming from the console's blinking indicators. His communication panel beeped. It was Ji Young, his support coordinator from the main ranger base. "I saw the broadcast." Ji Young's voice was quiet, sympathetic. She was young, only 26. But she had been supporting rangers for 4 years. "I'm sorry, Hyun-woo. They're making a mistake," he said flatly. "I know you believe that, but I don't just believe it. I know it." He stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the forest. The Deepthorn Valley. That has to be where they are. It's the only region large enough and dangerous enough that the survey teams wouldn't have reached it. There was a long pause. "Hyun-woo, you can't be thinking of going in there alone. The gravitational fields are unstable. There are toxic spore clouds. Predators that can take down a shuttle. It's called the Deep Thorn for a reason." "I'm not asking for permission," he said quietly. Ji Young sighed. "You're going anyway, aren't you?" "When he RW, I have to." Another pause. Then, Ji Young's voice came back, firmer this time. "Okay. But if you're doing this, you're doing it right. I'll pull together supply lists, route data, everything I can find about the valley. You'll need at least a week's worth of provisions, maybe 2. And Hyun-woo?" Her voice softened. "Come back alive." He smiled despite everything. "I'll do my best." For the next 2 days, Hyun-woo prepared. He packed food concentrates, water purification tablets, medical supplies, climbing gear, and his environmental suit. He checked and rechecked his equipment. The suit would protect him from toxic spores and help regulate his body temperature in the valley's extreme conditions. His rifle was loaded with tranquilizer darts, not bullets. If he found the Velkara, the last thing he wanted was to harm them. On his final night at the station, he pulled out an old photograph from his desk drawer. It was a picture taken 20 years ago, during the last confirmed Velkara sighting. The creature in the photo was magnificent silver-blue fur, intelligent eyes that seemed to look right through the camera, and a presence that radiated power and grace. A team of researchers had managed to photograph it before it vanished into the forest. "I'm coming to find you," Hyun-woo whispered to the image. "They've given up on you, but I haven't." He set the photograph down and walked to his equipment pile. It would take him 3 days just to reach the valley's edge, then another 2 days to navigate into its heart. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal, but the alternative was watching Kethara 7 be destroyed, knowing he had done nothing. Hyun-woo looked out at the stars through his window. Somewhere up there, the mining corporations were already preparing their equipment, eager to strip this planet bare. They had 30 days before operations could legally begin. He had 30 days to prove them all wrong. The ranger took a deep breath, shouldered his pack, and stepped out into the night. The forest was dark and full of sounds. The chirping of nocturnal insects, the distant calls of tree-dwelling creatures, the whisper of wind through alien leaves. Somewhere far ahead, beyond the mapped territories and into the unknown, the Deep Thorn Valley waited. And if he was right, so did the Velkara. The first day of the journey was deceptively easy. Hyun-woo followed mapped trails through the outer forest, making good time. The trees here were familiar friends, with their purple-tinged bark and broad leaves that caught the morning light. He had walked these paths hundreds of times during his years as a ranger. Ji Young checked in every few hours through his communicator. "Vitals look good. You're making excellent time. At this rate, you'll reach the boundary markers by tomorrow evening." "Weather holding?" Hyun-woo asked, pushing through a cluster of ferns. Clear skies for the next 3 days. After that, there's a storm system moving in, but you should be well into the valley by then. She paused. Hyunwoo, I'm seeing increased orbital traffic. Mining ships are already arriving. He felt anger flash through him but kept his voice steady. How many? 3 corporate vessels so far. They're not allowed to land yet, but they're conducting preliminary scans from orbit. Ji Young's frustration came through, clearly. There's a Captain Rel who keeps contacting the Ranger base. He wants to know when we'll be evacuating. Tell him we're not, Hyunwoo said firmly. I did. He didn't like that answer. The second day brought Hyunwoo to the edge of familiar territory. The trees grew taller here, blocking out more sunlight. The undergrowth became denser, forcing him to use his machete to clear a path. He began seeing signs that few humans had been this way. The trail markers were old and weathered, some barely visible. By evening, he reached the boundary markers that designated the edge of surveyed territory. Beyond this point, the forest became truly wild. He made camp in a small clearing, setting up his thermal tent and starting a fire. The night sounds were different here, more primal. Something large moved through the trees in the distance, making the ground tremble slightly with its footsteps. I'm at the boundary, he reported to Ji Young. Copy that. Hyunwoo, I'm going to be honest with you. My scanners can't penetrate very far into the deep thorn region. Once you're in the valley proper, I'll lose a lot of sensor data. Communication should still work, but I won't be able to see what's around you. Understood. Be careful, she said quietly. The third day tested him. The terrain began to slope downward as he approached the valley. The gravitational anomalies Ji Young had warned about started to manifest. One moment Hyunwoo would feel normal. The next he would feel twice as heavy, his legs struggling to carry him forward. Then the sensation would reverse, and he would feel almost weightless, his steps carrying him too far and making him stumble. The trees here were ancient and twisted, their trunks spiraling in unnatural patterns. Bioluminescent fungi grew on their bark, pulsing with soft blue and green light. The air had a strange metallic taste, and Hyunwoo activated his suit's air filtration system. I'm entering the valley rim, he reported. I'm getting scattered readings now, Ji Young replied, her voice crackling slightly with interference. Watch out for the spore clouds. They should be visible as a yellowish mist. As if summoned by her words, Hyunwoo spotted the first spore cloud drifting between the trees ahead. It moved like a living thing, pulsing and swirling. He gave it a wide berth, remembering the reports about their toxicity. One breath without a filter, and a person would be hallucinating within minutes, dead within an hour. The fourth day brought him into the deep thorn valley proper. The name became obvious immediately. Everything here had thorns. The trees had thorns as long as his forearm. The bushes were covered in smaller, needle-sharp thorns. Even some of the grasses had tiny barbs that caught on his suit. The valley floor was a maze of obstacles, and progress slowed to a crawl. But Hyunwoo's heart raced with excitement because he found the first real sign. A tree trunk, stripped of bark in long vertical gouges. The marks were fresh, no more than a few days old. Something large with claws had used this tree as a scratching post. The pattern matched historical records of Velkara territorial markings. Ji Young, I found something, he said, documenting the marks with his scanner. The response took longer than usual. Say again? You're breaking up. Territorial markings, he repeated louder. Fresh ones. I'm on the right track. That's excellent. Keep ing. The communication degraded after that. Hyunwoo was truly alone now, deep in uncharted territory. He pressed on, following more signs. Here, a cluster of plants, trampled by something massive. There, a stream bank with deep footprints that were already filling with water but were unmistakably large and four-toed. On the fifth day, he found the cave system. It was hidden behind a waterfall that cascaded down a cliff face covered in thorny vines. Hyun-woo almost missed it, but something made him look closer. The water's mist created rainbows in the strange valley light, and through the falling water, he could see darkness beyond. He approached carefully, his heart pounding. Around the cave entrance, more territorial markings scarred the rock. These were deeper, more aggressive. This was someone's home, and they were warning others to stay away. Hyun-woo checked his tranquilizer rifle and stepped through the waterfall. The cave beyond was massive, the ceiling lost in shadows above. His suit's lights illuminated walls covered in phosphorescent moss that glowed softly. The cave floor showed clear signs of use, smooth patches where something large had lain, scrape marks. And in the center, the unmistakable signs of a nest. Then he heard it. A low, rumbling sound that was half growl, half whimper. It came from deeper in the cave. Hyun-woo moved forward slowly, every sense alert. Around a corner, in a chamber lit by glowing moss, he saw her. A Velkhara, and she was magnificent even in her dying state. Her silver-blue fur was matted with blood from deep wounds across her side and shoulder. She lay on her side, breathing heavily, her massive chest rising and falling with effort. The creature's head lifted as she sensed him, her eyes intelligent, knowing eyes fixed on Hyun-woo. He expected her to snarl, to attack, despite her injuries. Instead, she made a sound he had never heard described in any report. It was almost a plea, desperate and urgent. "Easy," Hyun-woo said softly, raising his empty hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." The Velkhara struggled to stand but couldn't. Instead, she stretched her head toward the back of the chamber and made that pleading sound again. Her eyes went from Hyun-woo to the darkness behind her, then back to him. She was trying to tell him something. Hyun-woo moved carefully around her, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. The Velkhara tracked him with her eyes, but didn't try to stop him. As he moved deeper into the chamber, he heard new sounds, small sounds, crying sounds. His light found them in a hollow carved into the cave wall, lined with soft moss and shed fur. 3 Velkhara cubs, tiny compared to their mother, but still, each the size of a large dog. They were crying, huddled together, their eyes barely open. They couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. "Oh no," Hyun-woo whispered. He turned back to the mother. She was watching him, and somehow he understood. She was dying. She had been hurt badly, probably by one of the valley's many predators. She knew she wouldn't survive, and she was asking him, begging him to save her children. Hyun-woo moved back to her side and knelt down. "I'll save them," he promised, his voice thick. "I'll protect them." The Velkhara's massive head lowered to rest on the cave floor. She let out one long, slow breath, and the light in her eyes dimmed. Hyun-woo watched as the legendary creature died, her final act one of trust in the human who had found her. For a long moment, he simply knelt there, overwhelmed by the weight of what had just happened. Then, the cubs' crying intensified, pulling him back to reality. They were cold, hungry, and alone. Hyun-woo went to them, pulling thermal blankets from his pack. The cubs were warm to the touch, but shivering. He wrapped them carefully, noting their condition. They were thin, probably underfed even before their mother was injured. One was noticeably smaller than the others, a tiny female whose cry was weaker than her siblings. "Okay," he said to them. To himself. To the universe. "Okay. We're going back. All of us. I don't know how yet. But we're going back, and I'm going to prove to everyone that you exist. That you matter. That this planet matters." The cubs quieted slightly at the sound of his voice, their small bodies warm against his chest as he held them close. Outside the cave, quote, the valley darkened as night approached. Hyun-woo looked at the mother Velkhara one last time, committing her position to memory so others could find her and honor her sacrifice. Then he turned toward the cave entrance with 3 small lives depending on him, beginning a journey that would be far more dangerous than the one that brought him here. The first night with the cubs was the hardest. Hyunwoo set up camp just outside the cave, unable to travel in darkness through the treacherous valley. The 3 cubs cried constantly, their small bodies squirming against him as they searched for their mother's warmth and milk. He had food concentrates, water, and emergency supplies, but nothing suitable for newborn Velkara. Hyunwoo mixed protein powder with water, creating a thin paste. Using a corner of his cloth, he let the cubs suck the moisture. They took it reluctantly, their small mouths working awkwardly, but it was better than nothing. The smallest cub, the female, barely drank it all. Her cries were weaker than her brother's, and her body felt cold despite the thermal blankets. Hyunwoo held her against his chest, using his own body heat to keep her warm. "Come on, little one," he whispered. "Stay with me." At dawn, he tried reaching Ji Young. The communicator crackled with interference, but he caught fragments of her voice. "Hyunwoo? Signal weak. You okay?" "I found them," he said urgently. "Ji Young, I found 3 cubs. I'm bringing them back, but I need help. Do we have any formula suitable for carnivorous mammals?" Static filled the line for several long seconds. Then Ji Young's voice came back, clearer this time. "Did you say cubs? Velkara cubs?" "Yes. 3 of them. The mother died protecting them. They're maybe 3 weeks old, and they're starving. I need to get them back to the station as fast as possible." "Hyunwoo, that's a 5-day journey through the valley." Ji Young's voice was tight with concern. "Can they survive that long?" "They have to." He looked at the 3 small bundles wrapped in his blankets. "I'm not letting them die. Contact Dr. Hana at the Xenobiology Center. Tell her what we have, and ask her to prepare whatever she can." "Already on it." "Hyunwoo, there's something else. The mining company isn't waiting. Captain Rel has deployed survey teams to the forest perimeter. They're using heavy equipment that's disrupting the ecosystem. We've had reports of animal migrations being affected." Hyunwoo felt rage build in his chest. "They don't have authorization yet. The 30 days aren't up. They claim it's just preliminary surveying, not actual mining. Legally, they're in the clear." Ji Young paused. "There's more. Ambassador Dai Soon is here. She arrived an hour ago with someone from the Galactic Conservation Council, a Director Krill. They're demanding you return immediately and bring any findings for official verification." "Tell them I'll return when I return," Hyunwoo said flatly. "Right now, keeping these cubs alive is my only priority." The journey back began badly and got worse. The gravitational anomalies seemed more intense, while Hyunwoo carried the extra weight. He fashioned a carrier system using his pack and thermal blankets, securing the cubs against his chest and back. They needed to be fed every few hours, and each feeding took precious time. By midday, he had only covered what should have been an hour's worth of distance. The cubs cried when they were hungry, cried when they needed to relieve themselves, cried when they were uncomfortable. Hyunwoo became an expert at interpreting their different sounds. On the second day, disaster nearly struck. A spore cloud drifted into his path, and in his exhaustion, Hyunwoo didn't notice until he was almost inside it. The yellowish mist swirled closer, and he realized with horror that there was no way around. The valley walls rose steep on either side, and backtracking would cost him a full day. He sealed his suit completely and checked the cubs. Their small faces were pressed against him through the blankets, but they had no protection beyond that. The spore cloud wouldn't kill them immediately, but exposure would be dangerous. Hyunwoo had no choice. He wrapped additional fabric around the cubs, covered their small mouths and noses as much as possible, and ran. His legs burned as he sprinted through the cloud, holding his breath even though his suit should protect him. The world turned yellow around him, and the spores pressed against his visor like tiny insects. When he burst out the other side, gasping, he immediately checked the cubs. 2 were coughing, but seemed okay. The smallest female wasn't breathing at all, No, no, no. Hyun-woo laid her on the ground, his hands shaking. She was so small, her chest not moving. He had seen the procedure done on human infants during emergency training. Could it work on a Velkara? He had to try. Using 2 fingers, he pressed gently on her tiny chest in rhythmic compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. He breathed softly into her small mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on, he begged. Please. 1, 2, 3, 4. The cub convulsed and coughed, her small body jerking as she gasped for air. Her eyes opened, unfocused, and frightened. Then she started crying, the most beautiful sound Hyun-woo had ever heard. He held her close, his whole body shaking with relief. That's it. That's my girl. Breathe. Ji-young's voice crackled over the communicator. Hyun-woo? Your vitals just spiked. What happened? One of the cubs stopped breathing. She's okay now. Ji-young, how much farther to clear terrain? You're still 2 days from the valley edge at your current pace. Her voice was grim. There's a problem. The mining surveys are moving closer to your position. They're using seismic charges to map mineral deposits. The vibrations are triggering rock slides in the valley. As if to punctuate her words, a distant rumble echoed through the valley. Hyun-woo felt the ground tremble beneath his feet. They're going to bring the whole valley down, he said in disbelief. Dr. Hana is here now, Ji-young continued. She says, infant Velkara need to feed every 3 hours minimum. Hyun-woo, you need to move faster. I'm trying, he said through gritted teeth. On the 3rd day, Hyun-woo reached the collapsed bridge. He had known it was coming. This rope bridge was marked on his maps as questionable even before his journey began. But seeing it destroyed, the ropes hanging limply over a ravine that dropped 50 meters to jagged rocks below, made his heart sink. The ravine stretched in both directions, too wide to cross anywhere nearby. Going around would add at least 2 more days to his journey. The cubs might not have 2 days. The smallest female was getting weaker despite his efforts to keep her fed and warm. Hyun-woo studied the remains of the bridge. The anchor points on both sides were still solid, driven deep into the rock. The rope, while frayed, might still hold weight. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was also the only option. He secured the cubs in their carrier as tightly as possible, then tied additional safety lines around himself and them. The communicator crackled. What are you doing? Ji-young's voice was alarmed. Your location stopped moving. And now I'm getting stress readings from your suit. There's a ravine. The bridge is out. I'm going across on the ropes. Quote, Hyun-woo, no, that's suicide. Go around. We don't have time. He grabbed the rope and tested it. It held, but barely. If I don't make it, tell Dr. Hana everything you can about the cub's condition. She'll need to find any others that might be in the valley. Don't you dare on me, Ji-young said fiercely. Hyun-woo smiled despite everything. I'll do my best. He began to cross. Hand over hand, the rope biting into his gloves, even through the protective material. The cubs were quiet, almost as if they sensed the danger. Beneath him, the ravine yawned, dark and hungry. Halfway across, the rope jerked. One of the anchor points was giving way. Hyun-woo froze, his arms burning with effort. The cubs weighed almost nothing individually, but together with his pack and equipment, he was carrying significant weight. Almost there, he told himself. Just a little more. Another jerk. The rope dropped 1/2 meter, and Hyun-woo's stomach lurched. The smallest cub let out a frightened cry against his chest. I've got you, he promised. I've got all of you. He moved faster, ignoring the burning in his arms and shoulders. Hand over hand. Don't look down. Hand over hand. Almost there. His hand touched rock. The far side. Hyun-woo pulled himself up and over the edge, rolling onto solid ground. For a moment, He just lay there, breathing hard, feeling the cubs squirm against him. Behind him, the rope gave one final groan and fell into the ravine. Made it. He gasped into his communicator. Ji Young's sob of relief was clear even through the static. Don't ever do that again. Can't promise that, Hyunwoo said, checking the cubs. They were scared but unhurt. How far to the station now? One more day if you can keep this pace. Hyunwoo. The director Krill is getting impatient. He's threatening to send security teams to intercept you. Let him try. Hyunwoo stood up, adjusting the cub's carrier. These three are going to live. I'm going to prove they exist. And then we're going to save this planet. Graham. These three. He started walking, each step taking him closer to home and further into a fight he was determined to win. Hyunwoo saw the ranger station lights through the trees, just as dawn broke on the 7th day. His legs were shaking, his water supplies were gone, and he had eaten the last of his food concentrates the night before. But the three cubs were still alive, still crying their hungry cries against his chest. Ji Young met him at the perimeter, running across the clearing with Dr. Hana close behind. The xenobiologist was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. She was already reaching for the cubs before Hyunwoo had fully stopped walking. Let me see them, Dr. Hana said urgently. Hyunwoo carefully unwrapped the carrier, revealing the three cubs. They blinked in the morning light, their small faces scrunched and unhappy. The smallest female was barely moving, her breathing shallow. This one first, Dr. Hana said, taking the female cub with practiced gentleness. Ji Young. Bring the others. Hyunwoo. You need medical attention too. The cubs first, Hyunwoo said, but his legs chose that moment to give out. Ji Young caught him before he hit the ground. Stubborn idiot, she muttered, but her eyes were wet. You actually did it. The next few hours were a blur. Hyunwoo was checked over by the station's medical systems, while Dr. Hana worked frantically in the converted lab space. He could hear the cubs crying. Then slowly, the crying became less frequent. When he finally was cleared to move, he found Dr. Hana in the lab, exhaustion written on her face, but a smile breaking through. They're going to make it, she said. The female was critical, but she's responding to the formula I synthesized. It's not perfect, but it's keeping them alive. Hyunwoo leaned against the doorway, looking at the three cubs in their makeshift enclosure. They were sleeping now, their small sides rising and falling steadily. How long? Until they're stable. Days, at least. Weeks, to be certain. Dr. Hana pulled up data on her tablet. But Hyunwoo, these are definitely Velkara. Pure bloodline. I've been comparing their genetic markers to archived samples. This is incredible. This is proof the species survived. Tell that to the people outside, Ji Young said grimly. She gestured to the window where several official vehicles were parked. Director Krill arrived an hour ago. He brought security teams. Ambassador Dai Soon is running interference, but he's demanding the cubs be turned over to council custody immediately. Like hell, Hyunwoo said. That's basically what Dai Soon told him. Ji Young smiled slightly. But he's not backing down. He claims any biological findings must be verified through official channels. As if summoned by their conversation, someone knocked sharply on the station door. Hyunwoo opened it, to find Director Krill standing there, flanked by two security officers. Krill was an insectoid alien, his multifaceted eyes glittering with bureaucratic authority. Ranger Hyunwoo, Krill said in his clicking voice. You have refused direct orders from the Galactic Conservation Council. You have entered forbidden territory, and you claim to have found specimens of an extinct species. These are serious matters. The specimens aren't claims, Director. They're in the lab right now. Hyunwoo crossed his arms. 3 living Velkara cubs. Proof the species survives. That is precisely what requires verification. Krill made a gesture, and the security officers moved forward. The cubs must be transferred to council custody immediately for genetic testing and authentication. They're not going anywhere. Dr. Hana appeared in the doorway, her voice steel. Those cubs are in critical condition. Moving them now could kill them. Doctor, this is not a medical decision. This is protocol. Protocol can wait until my patients are stable, Dr. Hana said flatly. The standoff was interrupted by Ambassador Dai-Soon's arrival. She swept into the station with the authority of someone who had spent decades in galactic politics. Director Krill, might I remind you that you have no legal jurisdiction to seize these animals. They were found on a protected planet by an authorized ranger in the course of his duties. The planet's protected status is under review, Krill countered. And the Velkara are declared extinct. These specimens must be authenticated. Then authenticate them here, Dai-Soon said smoothly. Dr. Hana is a certified xenobiologist. Her findings are admissible in any council court. The mining corporations have expressed concern about fraud, Krill said, his voice cold. They have invested considerable resources based on the Extinction Declaration. Ah, Hyunwoo said quietly. There it is. This isn't about verification at all. It's about protecting corporate interests. Krill's multifaceted eyes focused on him. I suggest you leave my station, Hyunwoo replied. The cubs stay here until Dr. Hana clears them for transport. That's final. The argument continued for hours, with more officials arriving throughout the day. Captain Rel from the mining corporation made angry demands. Other rangers from nearby stations came to show support. The small ranger station became the center of a political storm. Through it all, the cubs slept, unaware that their existence had become a galactic controversy. On the second day, a new player arrived. Director Tae-young from the Human Conservation Bureau was a tall man with graying hair and a politician's smile. He arrived with minimal fanfare and immediately requested a private meeting with Ambassador Dai-Soon and Hyunwoo. I've been sent to resolve this situation, Tae-young said once they were alone. The council is prepared to offer a compromise. They will acknowledge the cubs as authentic Velkara, but classify them as a remnant population, insufficient numbers to justify full protection status. That's not a compromise, Hyunwoo said angrily. That's surrender. That's politics, Tae-young replied. Sometimes we must accept partial victories. No. Hyunwoo stood up. These cubs prove the Velkara survive. That means there are likely more in the Deep Thorn Valley. We need full protection restored and a proper search expedition. The council won't agree to that without more evidence, Tae-young said. Then we get them more evidence. The formal hearing was scheduled for the 5th day. Judge Arbitrator then arrived to mediate. A tall being with crystalline features that reflected light in rainbow patterns. She was known throughout the galaxy for being impartial but strictly procedural. Everything would need to follow proper protocols. The hearing took place in the station's common room, hastily converted into a courtroom. Holographic displays showed the faces of council members watching from orbit and distant planets. Hyunwoo stood before them, feeling the weight of judgment. Present your evidence, Ranger, then said, her voice like wind chimes. Hyunwoo displayed his footage from the cave. The territorial markings. The dying mother Velkara. The discovery of the cubs. Dr. Hana presented genetic data, showing clear matches to archived Velkara DNA. The evidence was overwhelming, but then the council's scientists began their rebuttal. These genetic samples could be contaminated, one argued. The footage could be manipulated, another suggested. How do we know these aren't hybrid creatures or genetic recreations? A third demanded. Hyunwoo felt frustration building. They weren't interested in truth. They wanted plausible deniability. Then Dr. Hana spoke up. Bring the cubs in, Doctor, then said. That is highly irregular. So is declaring a species extinct without proper evidence. Dr. Hana replied. You want proof? Let me show you. The cubs were brought in, carried carefully by Ji-young. They were stronger now after days of proper feeding and care. The smallest female was alert, her eyes bright. They looked around at all the strange faces with curiosity rather than fear. Hyunwoo knelt down as Ji-young set them on the floor. The cubs immediately moved toward him. making small, chirping sounds. They recognized him, trusted him. The smallest female pressed her head against his hand. Then something remarkable happened. The cubs began to hum, a low, resonant sound that seemed to vibrate in the chest. The sound grew stronger, and suddenly, Hyunwoo felt something in his mind. Not words, exactly, but emotions, feelings, images of the mother, her final moments, her desperate hope that her children would survive. The room fell silent. Several of the council members gasped. Judge Arbitrator then stepped forward, her crystalline hand reaching toward the cubs. When the smallest female touched her hand, then's eyes widened. "I see," she whispered. "I feel. The mother." The telepathic connection was unmistakable. It was the legendary ability of the Velkara, thought to be myth. But here it was, undeniable, shared with everyone in the room. The cubs stopped humming and returned to Hyunwoo, who held them close. He looked up at Judge Then, at the council members watching through the displays, at all the officials who had tried to dismiss his findings. "They're real," he said quietly. "They're intelligent. And they deserve to live." Then turned to face the displays. "This hearing is in recess. I must deliberate on what I have witnessed." As the room cleared, Hyunwoo sat on the floor with the 3 cubs curled against him. Ji-young and Dr. Hana sat beside him, and even Ambassador Dai-soon looked hopeful for the first time. Director Taeyang approached, and his politician's smile was gone, replaced by genuine emotion. "I've been gathering testimonies," he said quietly. "Other rangers who saw signs of Velkara survival. I thought I'd need to use them as leverage. But after this," he looked at the cubs, "after this, I think we might actually win." Judge Arbitrator Then's deliberation lasted 3 days. During that time, the ranger station became a fortress under siege. Mining corporations sent lawyers and lobbyists. Environmental groups from across the galaxy sent messages of support. News crews tried to get footage of the cubs. Through it all, Hyunwoo stayed close to the 3 small lives he had promised to protect. The cubs were growing stronger each day. They were more active now, playing with each other in their enclosure. The smallest female, whom Dr. Hana had started calling Little Fighter, was particularly energetic. She would pounce on her brothers, starting tumbling play fights that ended with all 3 cubs in a pile, making small yipping sounds that might have been laughter. On the morning of the 3rd day, Then called everyone back to the makeshift courtroom. Her crystalline features were unreadable as the holographic displays flickered to life, showing council members from across the galaxy. After careful deliberation and review of all evidence, Then began, her voice formal. "This arbitrator finds that the specimens presented by Ranger Hyunwoo are authentic Velkara cubs. The genetic evidence is conclusive. The telepathic display confirms their species identity beyond doubt." Hyunwoo felt hope surge in his chest, but Then wasn't finished. "However, the existence of 3 juveniles does not necessarily constitute a viable population. The Council's original declaration of extinction may have been premature, but reversing that declaration requires proof of a sustainable breeding population." Chancellor Vorath's image leaned forward. "Then we propose a modified status. The Velkara are redesignated as critically endangered rather than extinct. The cubs will be relocated to a proper conservation facility. Kethara 7's mining operations can proceed with designated protected zones around areas where Velkara might exist." "No," a new voice interrupted. An elderly alien appeared in the holographic display, her form barely visible, but her presence commanding immediate attention. "I object to this compromise." "Elder Council Member Sirith?" Then sounded surprised. "You have been retired for this?" Then sounded. 20 years, Sirith finished. 20 years since I was overruled when I tried to push for more research into Velkara intelligence. 20 years since I warned this council that we were making a terrible mistake. Her ancient eyes swept across the assembly. I have remained silent long enough. It is time for the truth. She activated her own display, showing research documents decades old. The Velkara are not merely intelligent. They are what we call keystone empaths. Their telepathic abilities don't just allow communication. They maintain ecological balance through emotional and psychic bonds with other species. On Cathara 7. That's speculation, Forath said dismissively. It was speculation, Cirith replied. Then I conducted field studies. Studies that were suppressed because they were inconvenient for mining interests. The data is clear. When Velkara populations declined, so did the health of entire ecosystems. Plant diversity decreased. Animal migration patterns became erratic. The planet itself began to destabilize. Dr. Hanna stood up, her eyes wide. That explains the geological anomalies in the Deep Thorn Valley. The gravitational fluctuations. The unusual plant growth patterns. It's not natural. It's a response to the Velkara absence. Precisely, Cirith said. If the Velkara truly become extinct, Cathara 7 will die. Not immediately, but within a generation. The entire planetary ecosystem will collapse. The room erupted in argument. Mining representatives shouted about economic losses. Conservation advocates demanded immediate action. Quote, through it all, the three cubs sat quietly in their enclosure, watching the chaos with intelligent eyes. Then they began to hum again. That same resonant sound that vibrated in the chest. But this time, it was different. Stronger. The smallest female stepped forward. Her eyes locked on Judge Then. The other two cubs joined their voices to hers, and suddenly everyone in the room felt it. Images flooded through their minds. Not just from the mother's death, but from the planet itself. The Deep Thorn Valley teemed with life connected through invisible threads. Trees that communicated through root systems enhanced by Velkara telepathic resonance. Predators and prey maintaining balance through empathic understanding. The entire planet was a symphony, and the Velkara were the conductors. But the images also showed loss. Empty territories where Velkara once ranged. Ecosystems beginning to fray at the edges. The planets, slow dying. And then hope. The cubs showed glimpses of others like them, hidden in remote valleys. Not many, but enough. A dozen adults, maybe more. A population that could recover, if given the chance. The humming stopped. The cubs returned to Hyun Woo, exhausted from their effort. Little Fighter collapsed in his arms, her small body trembling. Did everyone see that? Ambassador Daisun asked quietly, then nodded slowly, her crystalline features reflecting rainbow light. I did. We all did. She turned to Chancellor Vorath. Chancellor, in light of this new evidence, I must insist on a full review of Cathara 7's status. Vorath looked shaken. Even his usual bureaucratic confidence had cracked. This is unprecedented. That's because we've never encountered a species like this before, Director Taeyang said, standing up. I have testimonies from 16 rangers across 4 planets, all reporting similar observations of telepathic species maintaining ecological balance. The Velkara aren't unique in this ability, but they may be the most powerful example we've found. The economic impact, Captain Rel began. The economic impact of a dead planet is total loss, Taeyang interrupted. The mining corporations can find minerals elsewhere. They cannot recreate a planetary ecosystem once it's destroyed. The argument continued for hours, but the tide had turned. The telepathic vision from the cubs had changed everything. Even the most skeptical council members couldn't deny what they had experienced. Finally, after heated debate and several votes, Judge Then announced the decision. The Galactic Conservation Council hereby reverses its extinction declaration for the Velkara. Furthermore, based on their confirmed status as keystone empaths, Cathara 7 is granted Level 1 protection status. All mining operations are permanently banned. A new conservation initiative will be established immediately. The mining representatives protested loudly, but it was over. They had lost. Hyun-woo closed his eyes, holding the 3 cubs close. He felt tears on his cheeks, and didn't bother to hide them. Ji-young put her hand on his shoulder, and Dr. Hana was openly crying. The hard work was just beginning. Within a week, a full conservation team arrived at Kithara 7. Youngmi, a junior ranger with bright eyes and boundless energy, was among the first volunteers. "I want to help," she told Hyun-woo simply. "I want to make sure this never happens again." More people came. Scientists, rangers, support staff from a dozen different species. The small ranger station expanded into a full research base. Plans were drawn up for a protected sanctuary that would span the entire Deep Thorn Valley and beyond. Dr. Hana led the search for other Velkara. Using the cubs' telepathic abilities as a guide, teams carefully explored remote regions. One by one, they found them. An adult male in the northern mountains. A female, with 2 cubs in a canyon system. A small pack of 5 in the deepest part of the valley. 14 Velkara, in total, including the cubs, a population that could recover. 2 months after the council's decision, Hyun-woo led an expedition back to the Deep Thorn Valley. The 3 cubs came with him, now old enough to wear tracking collars but still requiring supervision. They were half-grown now, their silver-blue fur shimmering in the sunlight, their movements becoming more graceful each day. Ji-young monitored from the new base station, her voice calm in Hyun-woo's earpiece. "I'm reading multiple Velkara signatures, converging on your position. Looks like they heard the cubs call." Hyun-woo had brought the cubs back to their birthplace, to the cave where their mother had died. They had carefully moved her body, giving her a proper resting place marked with stones. Now the cubs stood at the cave entrance, calling out with their telepathic voices, and the valley answered. From the forests and cliffs, adult Velkara emerged. They approached cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. The cubs ran forward to meet them, and the adults surrounded them, touching them gently with their massive heads, welcoming them into the pack. One female, larger than the others and bearing scars from old battles, approached Hyun-woo directly. She looked at him with those intelligent eyes, and he felt a whisper of thought in his mind. Not words, but meaning. Gratitude. Understanding. Recognition. "You're welcome," he said aloud, knowing she would understand the feeling, if not the words. The female Velkara touched her head to his hand briefly, then turned and led the cubs toward the pack. Little Fighter looked back once, her eyes meeting Hyun-woo's. Then she turned and ran to join her new family, her small form finally home where she belonged. Hyun-woo stood at the cave entrance as the sun set over the Deep Thorn Valley. The Velkara moved through the forest below, their forms barely visible in the growing darkness, but he could feel them. Their presence like a warm pulse in his mind. The valley was alive again. Healing. Ji-young's voice crackled in his ear. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," he admitted. "But good. Really good." "You did it, Hyun-woo. You saved them." "We saved them," he corrected. "All of us." He looked out at the valley, at the forest stretching to distant mountains, at the stars beginning to appear overhead. They declared them extinct. They were so sure, so absolutely certain. They were right. "But they were wrong," Ji-young said softly. "Yeah." Hyun-woo smiled. "They were wrong. And I'm going to spend every day from now on making sure they never make that mistake again. Not here. Not with any species. Never again." He activated his recording device, beginning his official log entry. Ranger Hyun-woo. Day 67. A Velkara Recovery Initiative. Cubs successfully integrated with wild population. 14 confirmed individuals now thriving in protected territory. Ecosystem showing signs of recovery. The Deep Thorn Valley is quiet tonight. But it's the kind of quiet that's full of life, not empty. It's the sound of a planet healing. It's the sound of hope. Care, care, care. He closed the recording and began the trek back to base. Behind him, deep in the valley, a Velkara howled. The sound echoed across the mountains. Wild and free and alive. One by one, others joined the call until the whole valley rang with their voices. The song of a species that refused to die. The song of a planet that would endure. The song of hope that one stubborn human ranger had fought to preserve. And in the darkness, surrounded by the sounds of the living world, Hyunwoo walked home.